So this video is a hard one to figure out because I have so many things I want to talk about, but I have no idea where to start. So I apologize for the confusion you might have, but also, if I start talking about something and you're like, what about this thing? I will get to that, it's just that I'm taking a really weird-ass route in trying to explain things. So, to get on to topic, we should probably start with movies. So one of the things that people want to talk about is the idea that big mainstream movie companies always put political correctness and weird shit into their movies so overly sensitive people will get pandered to. And also, artistic merit is ruined, and demographics get demonized and alienated. And this is a fair point because this is definitely happening, but there's been this weird sort of thing happening now where the backlash from these stupid pandering companies and just people who don't like SJW stuff in general has become, in a small way, cancerous and stifling, as they are now doing kind of the same thing in a slightly different way. I'll explain. And a little clarification before I go on. What I'm talking about here in this video is far more rampant and worse on the SJW side, in my opinion. I guess just because they are the ones in the film industry, they are the ones who are doing these things. And it could be said that you can easily ignore this small thing that's happening across the aisle and on like the other side, I guess. But as I said, it is there, and I feel like it kind of needs to be said because it's a small part, but then again, SJWs kind of started off as a small thing and then it got worse and worse. So I do want to address this now. So one of the things that annoys me is when SJWs insert politics into a story that has no politics needed. And you can see me talk about those things in my video on the Bechdel test and another one I did a while back on young adult books and whatnot. So an example of this is when a female character is unnecessarily forced into being an empowering and very aggressive character towards men for no reason other than just that's what they're supposed to do, that's what empowering is for some reason. And they start saying all of these random feminist talking points for no reason. And I mean, it's completely inconsistent with their character, and just put in there for political reasons even though the story doesn't have political themes. And it's perfectly fine to call this out. I've done that and I have gotten a bit carried away with it too. But the thing is, I'm noticing that people are talking about political themes in movies when there aren't any. And what I'm saying is they're looking through their own political lens at this piece of entertainment and imagining these political messages from the other side and picking them apart. They're calling it SJW content when there's no proof and just doing the same things that SJWs do. You know those things SJWs do where they put politics into everything, as in when they're interpreting it. So you have the one side where they're just putting in things while they're making the content and forcing creators to put that content in when it isn't necessary, but there's the other side where the viewers are picking it apart and going, this movie is overly displaying themes of patriarchy propaganda by showing a white male character as a good person who has to rescue the woman. Yeah, no, it's just a movie. I mean, like I said in my video about politics and music, if the purpose of a thing you're writing is like, say like a George Orwell thing and it's based on explaining politics and all that through the movie, then other people explaining why they disagree or agree with it is perfectly fine. But if you're just talking about something that has no real politics in it, and you're just getting mad at it because it doesn't meet your own politics, or you're getting mad at the imagined politics, that's not good at all. And that happens in every group. I mean, there's this kind of thing now where, when I brought this up on Twitter, a couple people were just like, what do you mean? As if it was kind of almost weird to imagine that people who are against SJWs would do that, but we have to remember, people who are against SJWs aren't just one big group of people who agree on everything, as people keep complaining about the term community. But it's more like, there are a whole bunch of different people, and some of those people, just because they don't like the things that SJWs do and they call that triggered, or they call that whatever, it doesn't mean that they're actually consistent either. I mean, some of these people can just be easily as, I guess, triggered, except they just aren't triggered in the way SJWs are, so they're thought of as less like that. But then when stuff like this comes out where everybody's getting angry at a film or a book, and all of a sudden it's just like, it's too SJW for them, even though it isn't really, it's just imagined stuff that they're complaining about, it's suddenly really weird to criticize that. And I think that that's a dangerous trend. Also, some people aren't even watching the movies and just assuming it's SJW because of what they think it is. They're assuming, hey, because it's art house, or it's like slightly more artistic, it's probably SJW, and it's not. I am annoyed by this because I'm a hipster piece of shit who likes art house films, but then again, you can't just assume something and then say it's a thing, because, well, I mean, I assume so. The whole point of the backlash against SJWs is because that's what they do, and that's wrong. You need to actually look at things, regardless of what you think going into it, to actually see what it really is. You can't just read a headline of an article and assume that you know exactly what they're going to say at all times. That is incredibly toxic, so you saying that it's just harmless to assume, well, I mean, it's just an art house, it's like, you haven't seen it. I mean, like, at the worst, if you really don't want to watch the movie, then go and look up a plot summary and see if you still think it's SJW then. Or maybe just don't talk about the film if you haven't seen it. I haven't been talking about the new Star Wars movie because I don't give a shit and I haven't watched it, so I know that I would have no idea if it's actually SJW or not. I would have no clue. So I'm not gonna lump in this thing just because I saw someone do a video with it and there's like pointing out the SJW themes, or just because the people who made it wore a feminist shirt. Because that's another point. And I will be bringing examples into this, I just want to get my points out of the way. Just because somebody may have a shirt that has, like, you know, feminism or whatever on it, as long as they don't bring their politics into the film, then you can't really talk about their own politics with the film in mind, unless you're kind of saying, I guess, like, if you dislike the film, that's perfectly fine, but you don't have to try and push the whole anti-SJW thing in it as well. Like, I didn't like this because it was SJW. You don't have to say that. You can just not like the film. And if somebody left their politics out of the film, then you can criticize them as a person, but you can't try and dislike the film and pretend it's SJW just to get at them. I think that that's pretty petty. I mean, if the new Star Wars movie does actually have SJW films and it's annoying, that's fine for you to criticize, and you can definitely connect it to the people who are wearing feminist shirts, because I can see that there's a connection there. But if it doesn't really connect, then you can't really say it's because it's an SJW film and just point at the people who made it. If you leave your politics at the door when you make creative stuff, it's not a good habit to, like, drag it back in. So let me get to some examples. So there was the film Get Out, and from the outside looking in, it appears to be about a black dude going to a white town and all these evil white people who hate him because he's black and blah blah, evil white people and poor minority. Now, if you look in the comments of the trailer, you can see a bunch of people going on about how SJW it is because of these reasons. Keep in mind that yes, you are supposed to look at the movie by the trailer as a guide for if you want to check it out, but that's not my point. Some of these people were like, it looks like an SJW plotline, and they were talking about the plotline itself. Now, if they don't want to watch the movie and they just dismiss it, that's fine. If it genuinely looks like it annoys you, I'm not talking about them, they're fine. But you can still find some of these comments, by the way, if you go and scroll through. But some of these people were just going on about how it's SJW because they cast a black character as the main. And you know, here's where I kind of talk about both sides here. One, I think because of the amount of forced diversity, people are starting to see genuine, normal people being cast as a particular character because they happen to be talented or whatever, as a diversity cast because of the amount of times there has been one. However, this is not an excuse. In the same way that going, well, we're so sick of it because we keep seeing it over and over again, is not an excuse. Like, I understand what you're saying, but again, the entire point about this backlash against SJWs and everything is to point out that you should not just judge something just because you've seen another thing about it over and over again. You should at least make the effort to look into it, because the main character is a black character not just because of the diversity cast, it's because he was involved in making the fucking film. He's from Key and Peele. Like, he was involved in the writing process. He was involved in the film in more than acting. So if you had looked into that, it's not a diversity hire. It's just because he had a hand in making the fucking film. And here's the kicker, and spoilers for the film, by the way. This is actually a film making fun of and calling out SJWs. Let me spoil the plot for you to tell you what I actually mean. So this plot is basically that these white people are so focused on showing how progressive and respectful they are that they end up getting black people and then the white people take out their brains and put it into the bodies of black people, basically, as a short way of describing what's happening, to do this kind of invasion of the body snatchers type thing, where the black mind is kind of repressed and put to the back, so they're kind of aware what's going on, but they're also powerless and they can't actually move their bodies anymore. And the reason that the white people are doing this is, the main white characters explain they're doing this is because they want to, the only way they can truly appreciate the talent of and experiences of black people is to become the black people. That is actually the plot. So this is actually against SJWs. So it's about people who push their values onto people so much that they end up viciously harming them. And here is my point in telling you this. So since the film does have political issues with it, you can talk about them and why you agree or disagree, as I mentioned before. And if you dislike the film because of the way it handled those issues, maybe it's just the technical aspects that you don't like the camera angles, or the acting was shit, or the writing was either not funny or scary at all, that's fine. The issue I have is people, like in the comment section, going, OMG, it's an SJW film, without actually seeing the context. And people making videos, like I even remember Sargon at one point making a video where he was reading an article about the director saying stuff about how the film was about exploring race in an interesting way, and he was just assuming it's an SJW movie. And it's like, I get it, you're tired of all this shit, and you've seen this over and over again, but the whole point is to actually look at the context. Like, as I said, maybe while you're listening to the guy talk about race, you could go, I want to look up the plot synopsis for this film, and then I'm going to talk about the article so I get the proper context. Because in the comment section of that video, there were just a bunch of people assuming that it's an SJW film and not bothered to look at it themselves. Not bothered to even look up the plot summary, just because it's like, hey, it's probably SJW, so we don't have to give a shit. I know that people are frustrated and tired, and so will just assume something is bad. And based on what they've seen before, I know people are frustrated. But that's not an excuse. I mean, how many times have you seen an SJW complain about something that they have not even seen? Like, they complain about a show. As I mentioned before, there was this chick who complained about the 100. And they were like, this lesbian character died, that's a bad thing. And she mentioned she didn't watch the show. Now look at what's going on here. Do you not see the same thing? Because I sure as hell do. This is not a good thing. It just creates more problems. It makes people even more frustrated because they think that this SJW thing is going on way more than they actually would see if they just looked at it. And that's going to psych people out because they're going to be like, wow, this shit is much worse than I thought it was. Now I'm just going to be super cranky and frustrated and unhappy. Meanwhile, if you actually encourage people to look at it themselves before judging it, then maybe it would be better. The next one I want to talk about is an art house film, as I mentioned. Now, for some reason, there is an assumption that the majority of art is SJW. And first example is talking about the Paul Joseph Watson video here. This is where, as you've seen it, he acts like the majority of modern art is just SJWs painting shit that doesn't make sense. Now, there is definitely an element to where a group of people who are very just vapid and are SJWs, there is a group of people trying to take over art. And they're trying to do this because they think that their art is the only art and it's the only good art or whatever. So it may look like that is the case. And I understand, again, it's understandable to see that. But there are still loads of artists who are good at stuff. And if you look, you'll find that the majority of them are actually really good artists. Just because it's artsy doesn't mean that it's bad. And it does communicate a lot of good things. There are artists who go against SJWs and are for free speech. And you're just not finding them because you're not really looking at it. You're just judging it as something that is SJW because it's a label to just put onto something now without looking into it. And if you don't like art, then just say you don't like art. You don't have to say that you don't like art because it's too SJW for you. You can just say you don't like art for your own opinion and the majority of other reasons that you could say you don't like it. It reminds me a bit of that thing Filthy Frank made fun of once, you know, the I was born in the wrong generation because I listened to good music thing. It's like that. Because no, if you look, you will find some really good modern music like Ghost or Ariel Pink, and any of the other things. Even if you don't like the ones I mentioned, you will find some that are good for your taste. There are so many things, so don't just assume you know it all because you're frustrated with one facet of it, or maybe like the loud minority voice of it, and you're just frustrated with that. Because I get it, but there's no excuse. So I'll just go for one more specific example now. I want to make sure to you that I am making it clear that it's something that everyone does once in a while, and while some people go crazy and act like the SJWs do, it's kind of something that everyone has done. And, you know, I've done it. It's your brain kind of telling you that you need to take a little bit of a step back to deal with this stuff and check yourself before you keep going down this fucking rabbit hole because you're starting to connect the dots of things that aren't really there. And I do respect a lot of these people, but this is, like, because I respect them, that's why I'm making this video, because if you respect what someone does, if you actually respect someone, you want them to perform at what they're doing, like video making or whatever, they're at their best. You want them to be aware of what's going on, and you want them to actually get the criticism that they need. So the example I'm using is Computing Forever's video he made a while back, where he made some very valid points about how Hollywood is getting really shitty and the Oscars and Golden Globes are losing viewership every single time because of how much they push the social justice narrative. And this is all well and good, but then he started talking about the engagement in films, saying that the films with SJW themes might be doing well with pandering critics but not with audiences, which is also true. But to demonstrate this point, he shows the Rotten Tomato scores, and here lies the problem. So he goes through some SJW films and shows that even though critics say it's progressive and therefore good, the audience is saying it's shit by the percentages. But then he goes through a bunch of other random ones in the background of what he's talking about that don't have anything to do with the concept of the video. It's like he just saw the fact that the engagement across demographics with audiences and film critics was different, and therefore it must be SJW because the films were also art house, or they just had that disconnect, and that was obviously the case. Because that doesn't work, because there are some really shitty comedy movies and whatnot that have really, really high audience ratings but really low critic ratings, and people hate those movies. And let me explain further what I mean. So let me use the film Mother, which was shown in one of these many images while he was talking, that I have the problem with. I'm going to explain, one, why the percentage of engagement being different from critics to audiences and vice versa is not because of SJW stuff necessarily, or that it makes the film a bad film, but also, two, that if people who have seen the film are calling it SJW, there is some disconnect there. But that doesn't mean that you have to like the film. I want to end this video soon, so I will not spend too much time, because this is my last point, and yes, there will be spoilers if you actually give a shit. So the premise of this film is that it's actually a metaphor for the Bible. So the main dude is a graceful poet writing a book, and people really want to see it, and that's the Bible. And he's God. And the reason that Jennifer Lawrence's character seems so perfect and doughy-eyed is because she's representing Mother Nature and blah blah blah. So people are coming in and destroying her house. So for some people, it's like, well, isn't that a bit SJW? Because, making humans look horrible because of Mother Nature and blah blah blah. Not necessarily. Even though there are some themes that you might consider political fuckery, I only really consider them something to complain about if they are really, really over the top. Like this film just said that, hey, it's focusing on the Bible, yet the entire time it'll focus on nature instead. Now, if you saw that, fair enough, but the main focus I felt was really God's character, and Mother Nature was more like representing the house itself and the torture aspect of the emotions that wanted to be conveyed. And by the way, I thought the film was mediocre. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just trying to explain. So now let's explain why the audience score is so low. So many people like myself gave it a lower score because we're sick of the fact that Darren Aronofsky decides that he wants to make really fucking stupid films where he just completely exaggerates explaining the plot because he thinks that he's so smart. So the entire film, and he even explained the film himself afterwards. He was like, this is what it's about. Do you get it? Do you get it? It's God, guys, it's God. Remember when Orwell made Animal Farm and made an allegory? I'm so intelligent because I'm trying to copy him. That's not to say that I didn't really like elements of the film, but it's one of the reasons why it put me off. And it's one of the reasons why the audience gave it a slightly lower score. Secondly, not all critics are SJWs. Your Movie Sucks is not an SJW by any means. And if you actually see stuff that he says, say on his gaming channel, you would know that. People just have different tastes. Which brings me to my next point. Like I mentioned before, there are many different types in a genre depending on what you want, and all of them have good and bad films in them. The vast majority of audiences that go to the cinema on a regular basis are what I guess you could consider mainstream. They love popcorn movies, so action and entertainment that isn't really focusing much on the style and conveying some weirder shit that art does. Now this is fine because there are some great things in there, like some of my favorites are Hardcore Henry and the Mad Max films, but it just so happens that I like the other artsy stuff as well. And those fall into the second category, the weird artsy category, like Under the Skin and Eraserhead, which are good films. And it just so happens that most critics like the artsy stuff, and one of the reasons why there's this split is because most of the time a lot of the artsy films do not have the budget or are just not let in to be played in the circuit like movies are. Like Transformers films are always played in circuit, they're always in theaters, but the art films rarely ever are, so you get this audience who's used to going to films and seeing the same thing, or seeing popcorn movies, and all of a sudden they get this artsy film that they've never seen before, that are usually just for people who look on, what's that site called? Criterion or whatever? Like stuff like that. And it's just there's this disconnect because they don't enjoy it. That's where you get the lower score from. It doesn't mean that it's a super SJW film and that the only way to dislike it is to say it's SJW. And also, if you rely on movie scores, just go for the ones that match you best. If you don't like art movies, don't listen to the critics. And if you don't like popcorn movies, just listen to the critics, I guess. Or just read a few reviews and see what you like. Or find a reviewer that you like I like Your Movie Sucks, and our opinions generally match, so if he says he dislikes something, I will probably dislike it too, but I'll still check it out. And like I said in my Bechdel test video, if people are making the movie or whatever, and they have their politics, as long as it doesn't go into the movie. I might criticize something they say from them as a person, but I won't try and drag it into the movie unless I'm trying to prove a point, like, in the movie you made, you had this character, little did you know that they're actually doing the opposite of what you're saying, or whatever. And that's not really to say that that thing that they're doing isn't like, that's anti-feminist, that's the thing that they're doing, it's anti-feminist, it's on my team, or whatever you might think. What I'd just be saying is this is a character that is acting against what you're saying. So I guess there's a case-by-case basis there, but a lot of the time it's kind of annoying. I get you, I get what you're saying. The point is, people need to keep the in-world fiction stuff in the film separate from the real-life stuff unless it is crossed over and there's a reason to talk about it. And that's where I'll end this video, because I'm getting way too frustrated for my own good. So sorry for the long confusing shit, I just wanted to say some things. Everything is kind of unraveling and spinning out of control, and it's annoying. People are just using all of their arguments to try and find these invisible little things in other people's creations and saying that that's somehow wrong for some reason. And it's just really annoying to wade through, and I don't know. I wanted to start talking about this topic, but I had no idea how to, so that's why I started it in this really weird, sudden video. And it's just a starting point of the concepts that I'm talking about, so if you think that I missed something, I'm probably going to cover it next time. And I may seem a bit passive-aggressive, but I have to be honest with all this stupid shit, and if I see something like this that's making me kind of angry, especially if I'm being asked to talk about how SJW things are when I really don't think they are, and I have to say, no, I'm not going to talk about that, because that's stupid. I wanted to say that. If you're coming to this channel for me to just point at every single little thing in the world and say how SJW it is, this is not the place for you. I'm not keeping a tab on every single BuzzFeed video, I'm not looking at every single movie and pointing out how SJW it is, as opposed to SJW I thought it would be. Like, obviously I love talking about this stuff, but I'm going to keep it to where I actually think it matters. Where I actually think that it's interesting, like deconstructing the Polygon article. And that's not to say that I won't pick a couple weird, stupid videos to do. I mean, I have some Anita Sarkeesian things planned, but that's just because I want to talk about it from the perspective of someone who hates the fact that she's getting all the information in games wrong. I'm going to be very selective about that, and I have been dumping content that isn't at all to do with any of this, like the Jonestown thing, on people because I want to say I am not going to talk about SJWs all the fucking time. That's a kind of overdone topic. And the YouTube stuff is really starting to get to me more than I wanted to. I mean, so many people are talking about how they can't see certain things and they're getting unsubbed and everything, and I want to help, and I feel like it's my responsibility because this is my channel and I should be able to help you and actually make it easier for you to hang around, but I can't do shit because I can't take the website apart and rewrite the code all by myself. And it sucks, but that's the truth. And I've been making more content on my other channel just because it's fun to deal with the major burnout that I'm feeling right now. And I'm trying to rewrite the script for Jonestown Part 2, but I keep just deleting it and starting again because I feel like I can't do it right. So yeah, if you're wondering where I am, I'm just probably on my other channel fucking around in some stupid games. I've been playing creepypasta games lately and they're really fucking terrible, which is a lot of fun, because I get to just rag on them and talk about how terrible they are, which is very cathartic for me. So yeah, you can go check that out if you want. If not, then hang tight, I'm sure that everything's gonna be fine at some point. But it's probably gonna get a lot more toxic before it gets better, and I just want to do my part to try and help.